So I am page 153. I think it's got 250 pages, so I'm on the home stretch. I have 100 to go. I'm still having problems. I'm still having a lot of issues. I really don't like the main character. I find her very entitled. So she returned to the scene of the crime, which is cornered off by the police, and like a young officer was like, sorry miss, you can't go through there, like this is a closed crime scene, or like there's an investigation going on. And she's like, do you know who I am? I am best friends with the inspector. I can't remember his surname. Like, he is my bestie and he's so powerful. If you want to like keep your job, you better let me in there. And then the inspector does arrive, but he's very chill about it. He kind of like rolls his eyes at her and sort of just lets her in anyway. And I was like, what? So there was that kind of rubbed me off the wrong way. Like, I think I would have much rather like she snuck in to the theatre like she wasn't supposed to be there kind of thing, rather than being like, do you know who my best friend is? Do you know who I am? I'm gonna crack this case. Then when she's in the bed, she claims that she wants to pick up something for one of her new friends, which she just met the day before. Bear in mind, she's met like the entire cast of the production of A Christmas Carol, which is what is going on at the theatre. And so she spent like the whole night before drinking with the cast and the crew, which is very minimal. Like, it's very small. I think there was the guy who died. There's the director, who was his friend, and his wife. There's a guy called Alistair, or is it Arthur? His name begins with an A. I've already forgotten. I can't bother to look up. There's A. His sister Veronica, another guy called Cecil. There's Donald, and there's Irene. So not many characters. And then we've also been introduced to this new character of like the theatre critic Tyrone, who it turns out is actually a friend of Chester, who's the director, and Robert, who played Scrooge, who has died after being poisoned by mushrooms that our girl was able to identify. So our girl, Daphne, was wandering around backstage. She went into the dressing room of Chester's, broke into his safe using the old tactical hairpin in the lock routine. Is that actually a way that can you actually unlock doors? Like, I feel like I've only ever seen it in movies. I don't know if that's real, where you can actually like use a hairpin to like pry a lock. In the dressing room, in the safe, she finds a biscuit tin. She doesn't find what she's looking for. It's been taken. Mysterious. She finds a biscuit tin which is full of postcards and a photograph. So we're starting to get somewhere now. We're developing, like we're making connections. It turns out this character that was in the photograph is the mother of Cecil, which I totally saw coming the minute he started talking to Daphne. I was like, here we go, it's his mother. So Daphne was like, do I tell the inspector about this box of postcards that I have just found? Because it's very mysterious who sent them. Some of them had writing on it, but it never said what it said. Or did I misread that? I can't remember, but either way, they weren't signed. And so she's like, should I give it to the inspector? But then she's like, last time I told somebody my lead, they stole it from me. Which she was referencing her co-worker. She told him a lead and he went and reported on whatever it was. It's something that happened in the past prior to this first novel, because I was a bit confused. This book kept talking about like other cases that Daphne King has done, and I'm like, there is no other books. This is the only one. I was beginning to think I'd picked up like the second book in a series, but no, this is the only one. And it keeps talking about this case of something between a countess and diamonds, and I'm like, what? It reminds me of, it's giving like a recap of the previous book. You know, when like you read a book series that features the same detective or the same character, and it like just references back to the previous novels, being like, oh yeah, in this case this happened. So I was very confused, but it turns out I think she is literally just talking about her past and like a case that she solved on her own, and this is why she's now friends with the inspector, because she managed to solve a case, and now he just takes her along for the ride and believes everything she said. Cue my previous vlog when I mentioned how the inspector was ready to call it a day and was like, the guy had a heart attack on stage, right? Coats on, everybody, let's go. And she piped up and she was like, actually, Inspector, he was eating a sandwich that contained a poisonous mushroom. And the inspector was like, he took his coat off and he was like, well, I'll be damned, it's a murder. He didn't even inspect the mushrooms or nothing. He just took her at her word. I know this book is set in the 30s, so I imagine maybe back then there wasn't as much secrecy or security around like cases, and journalists were just wandering around all over the place, especially if you're besties with the inspector. Anyway, so our character Daphne suddenly made this discovery while she was hanging around with our little boy Cecil, who is like a 23 young actor who has been discovered by Chester and Robert, and he starts talking about how he likes painting, and he asks her, do you want to come up to my room to see my paintings? And I'm not joking when I say her reaction on paper was, heavens to Betsy. And I was ready to call it a day. I said this in my other vlog as well. I am really struggling with the fact that this book is set in the 30s, and the slang, the dialect, the way they're talking. I'm not for it. I'm really not for it. I realised that it's very cliched things that they say, and I'm just not really a massive fan of the way the characters talk. Also, this just cracked me up. So Cecil was saying to her, I have some of my paintings upstairs in my room. If you care to have a look, perhaps you could offer me some constructive criticism. If Daphne wasn't very much mistaken, this young man was flirting with her. Where? Heavens to Betsy. This certainly wouldn't do. I read Heavens to Betsy and I was like, no. Who used to say that? The dad in Bratz Forever Diamonds. Do you ever see that movie? The one where they were out on the road and they were going from like town to town to pick up like designers, and then they'd all compete at the very end, and they ended up stranded at like a farm, and they picked up this young girl, Sheridan, who like designed all the scarecrows in her family's land, and then like every time the girl, like, she wanted to go with them to be their designer, and the dad was like, heavens to Betsy.
Oh, heavens to Betsy, heavens to Betsy. You'll be careful on the road with my baby, won't you, girls?
Of course, Mr. Jones. Who's Betsy?
That's the only character in my life I ever remembered saying heavens to Betsy. But I'm really struggling with the dialogue because I'm not a big fan of how they're speaking. I genuinely think this author has typed in things people said in the 30s, because I've watched movies set in like the 20s, the 30s, and I don't feel like they spoke like this. The final thing I wanted to talk about is, so our character, while she was up in Cecil's room inspecting his paintings, she sees a photograph and she recognises, or he says that, oh, that's a photo of me and my mum when I was younger. And she looks at the photograph and she realises the woman in the photograph was also featured in a different photograph that was in the biscuit tin along with all the postcards that Chester had, and on the back was like a message to Robert from Josie. She realised that this, oh my god, Cecil's mum is Josie, who has had some form of relationship with Robert. Could she be one of the scorned women? Could she have a grudge against him? I'm also sitting here like, well, could he be the father of Cecil? That would explain why he's plucked him out of this small town and put him on the theatre stage. And so when our girl discovers this, what does she do? She runs off to tell Veronica, who she met the day before. Now, maybe I forgot to talk about it. When she finds the biscuit tin, she decides not to tell the inspector. This is a whole thing. She has this dialogue moment. Was I talking about that and then I got confused? I got like distracted. I must have done. I don't think I finished talking about it. But when she found the biscuit tin, she went through this whole thing of, I should tell the inspector, but I don't want to because last time I did that, somebody stole my lead, which was a guy that worked for the same newspaper as she did. So she was like, I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to figure this out on my own and I'm going to solve the case. And then the minute she made a discovery, she told Veronica, who she met the day before, who could also be in the list of suspects. So I'm like, girl, I hate when characters do that. I hate when you get a book like this and the main character instantly makes friends with somebody. Now, people can make friends all the time in any situation. You could literally meet them and then in a few years' time, you know, you're lifelong friends, you're bonded, you're besties for life. But the fact that she met her the day before, they had some gin together and then everybody all stayed up drinking wine late at night. Why are you telling her this lead that you didn't want to tell the inspector because you want to solve the case? But you're going to tell Veronica? Now her and Veronica are about to go on a little road trip to one of the places where one of the postcards was sent from, because all of the postcards were hand delivered except for one, which was sent from a little small town. So now they're going on a road trip to this small town to try and do some Scooby-Dooing. And I'm so confused. Why are you telling Veronica? Now, it could be a plot twist and Veronica could end up being a big bad. But I also just think, for the time being, it just reads as, how do I want to describe it? I don't want to say bad writing, but yeah, it's stupid. It's so stupid. You've literally just said you don't want to tell anybody or give away your leads to the police. To the police. But you're going to tell your new bestie that you literally just met the day before, who could very well be one of the killers or a killer. Mamma mia. Heavens to Betsy indeed. I don't know what direction this book's gonna go. I have 100 pages left. I'm gonna try and just cram it tonight, but I'm not optimistic. I'm really not. Cecil's probably gonna be the killer at this point, and it's all because Robert turns out to be his father and he spent no time with him or didn't know he existed, and so he decided to kill him, or because he wronged his mother. Anybody could be a killer at this point. Any one of them could be. And I don't think I'm going to be excited either way, unless it turns out to be something like Chester did it. Or his wife. Not his wife, that might not shock me. But if Chester did it, yeah. Or maybe Robert was poisoning himself with mushrooms because he too did not want to be a part of this book. I will update. Guys, it's happening. The end. Oh, you can see my socks. The end is nigh. Look at where I am. Look at this. So things are moving at a rapid pace. Considering that the entire book, like the first 150 pages has been, even 170, has been literally nothing. Like one person died and then there was like a couple of minor discoveries, but not really much. And also like on the back, it literally states on the back about how an old rival of Chester's is murdered in a dressing room. Are those associated with the play being picked off one by one? That second death has literally only just happened, and I'm at the 200 page mark. Our characters were kind of off wandering. I'm not joking when I say the absolute tomfoolery that is going on here. Our character went off on a hunch of like, well, I mentioned about the postcard, and she went to a town where it was sent from. She went to the post office to see if the post office lady could remember who sent the postcard. Now, of course, the post office lady was sensible and said, no, why the hell would I remember that? But then she happened to mention an old folks' home that she was going to on Christmas Eve. Out of the blue, very randomly, because of course your post office lady shares that sort of information with you. And our main character was suddenly like, light bulb moment, that's why our killer, our postcard killer, was in this town. They were visiting the old folks' home. I know I live in a small town and there's not much going on here, but for the love of God, there is a plentiful other reasons why somebody could be in a small town. They could be visiting family, they could be visiting a sick relative. Why she suddenly jumped to the conclusion of the old folks' home. But then when she gets to the old folks' home, she tries to read the guest book and she wasn't allowed access to it, and then they created a distraction. She was able to read it and she ripped out a page, blah, blah, blah. Then, in the charming conversation she was having with a staff member, because they were pretending that they had a father who they wanted to put in the home, She started talking about outside in the gardens, and he was talking about like how nice it is and there's a water, and oh, but there's these deadly mushrooms in the forest. So our character went out exploring and discovered the mushrooms and was like, that's the mushrooms. That's the deadly mushrooms that killed Robert. Well, that was convenient. That was very convenient. I know a lot of the time that mysteries are like, fictional mysteries are full of convenient plot points. They have to be, because how else could your regular, degular, everyday character somehow solve a mystery? But this was a bit too far-fetched. It was too much for me. It was too much. So then she comes back and one of the characters gets arrested. It turns out he's called in a tip to get himself arrested for the publicity. God help us. And now finally, the old rival of Chester's has now been murdered. So now we have 2 murders. We have postcards. Then my girl was looking through this photograph that had Cecil's mum on it, and Chester and Robert, and the old rival of Chester's, who is called Tyrone, the guy who was described as looking like a child's cartoon imagining of a frog turned into a human. And she's like looking through this photograph, which, remember, this is the 30s. This story is based in. And this photograph is several years old. So this photograph must have been taken in like the 20s, let's just say. She started looking through this photograph and it's of 4 of them standing in front of a bar. She notices on the bar the brand of cigars that was gifted to Chester. Now, Chester's been receiving mysterious packages along with these postcards, these threatening postcards. And the packages have all been items relating to like his past, but with like dead animals in it. So like there was cockroaches, there was beetles, probably a rat, those kind of stuff. One of them was a cigar box, and she saw the brand of cigars that he said it was on the bar in this photograph. Then she's looking again and she's like, there must be something else. So she whips out a magnifying glass and she looks up close to the photograph, and what does she see? The pen, the ballpoint pen. The ballpoint pen that was his latest parcel that he received, that then went missing when she went looking for it in the safe, that ended up stabbed into the side of Tyrone's neck. In the pocket of the bar man, the bar person. I don't think I could see a pen in someone's pocket in a photo from today. But alas, she did. And now, with absolutely no other indication of what is happening and what's going on, she knows who the killer is. So now we are gathering up all the suspects in the theatre, and Daphne's about to reveal who the killer is. And I have absolutely no clue, because at this point it could literally be anybody. I don't think it's Chester. I really don't, but it could be his wife. It's definitely somebody who's angry that I think he must have stolen their idea for a play that he did years ago, because there's a lot of references to it and it was his most famous play ever. I shall maybe record my reactions to me reading this to see if I actually have any, because this is gonna be good. It's gonna be bad. Who the hell is this? She's making another assumption, unless, like, I mean, I might be jumping the gun here, but yeah, she just told Cecil that his father was Robert Sterling. I thought she was gonna say like he might be your dad, but she's saying he is. I believe very strongly, so yes. You don't know for a fact. You are jumping the gun, girly. I mean, it would make sense, that's what I said, but let's get a paternity test. Okay, there is one chapter left. The killer has been revealed. I'm slightly surprised, okay? So I'm slightly surprised by it. It wasn't outstanding. I won't tell you who it is, but in fairness, I very much doubt that any of you will ever read this book. I was a little bit disappointed that everything did actually all tie together. I think there was a part of me that was hoping that the postcards and the presents were going to be part of like one story that was going to be like a bit of a red herring because it's been there from the very start, and then it turns out that the person that was doing all that was just out for like petty revenge, and then the real killer was somebody else who had a different grudge, but they were actually connected, which is fair enough, I suppose. It became one of those ones that I sort of hate a mystery where you're not given all the pieces, so you can't really figure it out. I can't make up my mind about it. What will I give it? Maybe a 3 out of 5? Because it wasn't that bad. I didn't like the main character. But you know what? 3 stars. It was interesting enough, and I didn't see the killer coming. 1 down, 3 to go.